All right, welcome everybody. I am excited to talk about the eclipse because I think it's going to be good information for you to have moving forward. I cannot believe that we're already in October. So this is part of a free workshop series that we've been doing all year. It's a fun way to spend a Saturday at noon. I appreciate your time and attention and your questions. They help me learn too when you're asking all of the good questions. The focus today is on a particular specific eclipse, which is happening next week. So likely you've already started to feel the grumblings of it. And it's possible if you're in the membership that you've seen the article that I wrote about this eclipse, and that it's possible that you've seen some of the material here today. So I'm going to go through that as efficiently as possible so we can make sure to answer your personal questions. And I will stop the recording when we get to your personal questions so that it's not out there for the whole world to see. So anybody live, we're going to handle your questions privately. But as for now, again, the point of this workshop is to go and look at the eclipse next week. And so if you're new to my work, my name is Tiffany Harlick. I live in Texas. I'm very passionate about astrology and beekeeping, and this is one of my favorite topics. So let's take a look. So October 14th, we've got the solar eclipse. It's in 21 degrees of Libra. And so what can we look at there with 21 degrees of Libra? We could look at the Sabian symbol. We could look at the themes of Libra, right? And we could also look at where this eclipse is in terms of the greater picture in the sky. And so does anybody have, or do you have all of your charts? Do you know if you have anything in 21 degrees of Libra? You do, Shelley, because I remember doing your reading recently. You have is it your sun?
Yeah, my son, I think, is 23 degrees.
Yeah. And what house is yours in?
Second house.
Second house. Okay. So yeah, so you have some exacerbated themes, I'll say it like that. And so Shelley might be experiencing this eclipse more strongly than the rest of us because it is really touching down on her natal sun. So if you have anything that is in 21 degrees of Libra, you might also be experiencing this in a way that is a little bit, I'm not going to say more profound, but it might be looking back on your life. This might be a very interesting period to study. Eclipses, right? Like they feel like there's 100 hours in a 24-hour period. There's an intensity about them. And it's one of the few things in astrology that is very difficult to predict. It's much easier to look back and be like, oh, that was what was going off around that time in my life. And so I want to give you that disclaimer. But to talk about this eclipse in particular, so what do we know about Libra, right? You guys are all good astrology students. You have some ideas. Darlene has Venus at 19 degrees. Okay, so that's cool because Venus rules Libra. And Louise has Neptune at 23 degrees. And Shelley has Jupiter at 18 degrees Libra too. So you can see, this is why this is kind of cool. Whenever I get an influx of astrology clients or an influx of workshop registrants, you end up seeing like, oh, that's why these people are drawn to that, because there's some specific like thing going on with them. So I love that you guys know your charts and can share this. So Libra, what we know about Libra, feel free to pop it in the chat if you're a student and wanting to learn more. But what we know about Libra, right, is it's really the great relationship, the sign of relationship. And it's the only one in the zodiac that's not man nor beast, right? It's the scales. And so there's a fairness. There's some issues around justice. Tracy's got Uranus at 24. Woo! I don't know, Tracy for the win, maybe. We'll see. Maybe we should do like a before and after and re-meet and see how the eclipse is shaking out for everyone. All right, so the Libra themes, right? Relationships, the easy one, but also balance, truth and justice, fairness. And so you'll start to notice, I've started to notice that anything that feels out of balance, that doesn't feel right, you're just not going to be able to tolerate as easily, and things are going to have to start to shift out and rebalance. So this eclipse, it can really shake things up, especially maybe for Tracy, right? That right on top of her Uranus, which is already about sudden change. Tracy, do you know what house that is falling in for you? And Julie's got Libra in the second house. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So Libra themes. It's also conjunct Mercury. So what do we know about Mercury, right? Mercury is the way we think, the way that we learn, the way that we understand things, the way that we communicate. With Mercury in Libra this season, so Mercury stays in a sign for about a month, give or take. What you're going to notice is there's kind of a this or that. Well, I could do this, but I could do that. And there's kind of a back and forth seesaw teetering of ideas. And it can start to feel like you're kicking tires. And for some of us, right, that are designed to make decisions quickly, that's very frustrating to feel like you're having to go back and forth. And for some of us that are designed to make decisions over time, right, that's just natural. We're going to have some ideas that we're going to change our mind about. I told you guys yesterday, we built a bunch of garden beds. I had it in my mind the way that they were going to go. I went out there, they were like this. And because they weren't the way that I thought, I'm like, immediately no. And I let it sit for a couple of hours. And I was like, actually, that's actually much better. I had a course that I'm teaching that I spent hours developing. And then, it was like, I was pivoted yesterday, and then I was pivoted this morning. Mercury is our education, the way that we think, the way that we're learning, the way that we're communicating. So I'm not surprised that there were some pivots and it didn't bother me as much, right? So this idea that this eclipse is right next to Mercury, you might notice that it can feel like a jerk around. There are 2 opportunities that I declined this week that don't make a lot of sense as to why I would decline them, but it started to do the whole, there's a healthy side, right? There's a healthy side of the looking at things from different angles. And there's a real unhealthy side of doing that. There's a real wishy-washy tone, right? When you start feeling jerk around, right? And I was feeling the jerk around. And so I just politely declined a couple projects, and I think it really surprised them, but I just don't have the energy to go back and forth as quite as much as they were needing. So, fine, right? The solar eclipse is going to magnify that, especially in our relationships. Well, this is my idea. Well, this is my idea. Well, this is my idea. Well, this is my idea, right? Okay, can I be open just to receive a bunch of ideas until that one hits that I know is for me? So interestingly, this eclipse is also opposing Chiron and Eris in Aries. Everybody has Eris in Aries that's on this call. Not everybody has Chiron and Aries. But the idea here is that this eclipse, something that's very illuminating, that's bringing something subconscious into the conscious, that's bringing the yin into the yang, that's bringing old belief I didn't realize I had out into the forefront. This is that more painful side of the eclipse where we're in a challenging position to Chiron, the wounded healer, and Eris, the goddess of discord, right? So I'm not going to be super surprised if we hear a lot of relationship issues that are upsetting, and I hate to say that because for the first 20 years of my astrology study, I was bright side. I was Betty Bright Eyes. I looked at all the bright angles of everything. I liked taking a more positive approach. But if I'm honest, that looks painful. I'm not predicting that it's going to be painful. But, the feminine journey is expensive and messy, as they say in feminine circles. And so I'm not going to be surprised if Eris, the goddess of discord, starts to shake things up in terms of relationships. Now, this isn't something that you need to go initiate and do. You don't need to just pierce and kerfuffle all your relationships or everything that feels imbalanced. Like I do that. Everything that feels imbalanced, I have to get it balanced right now. Can't think straight when things aren't in order. And so if things are a little messy over the next couple of weeks, just let a little time sift through. You guys might have seen on social media, we received my mom's loom. She had a weaving loom that's been gone for 30 years. That's a cycle of Saturn, right? And so it's back. And I keep moving it here, and then I keep moving it here, and it's just not quite right. And it means we need to, it turns the whole house into a situation just because of one little thing. And it can be like that, but it can be like that emotionally. It can be like that physically. And so they can be little upheavals, or they can be quite big. So I want you to be aware of that. This solar eclipse is also in a quincunx to Uranus and Taurus. And so I want to talk about that one a little bit more specifically. So it's in 20, so Uranus right now is in 22 degrees of Taurus, and it has been for, I don't know, a week or two, and it will be until October 21st or 4th. So it's hanging out on that degree. And I don't know if you say it Charubel, I'm not really sure, I haven't heard anybody say it, but this particular guy, John Thomas, was a clairvoyant and an astrologer. And if you're in our group, I just uploaded his work as a PDF document. And I uploaded the one from, I thought it was 1892, but I've written 1893 here. So late 1800s, this guy came up with some of the different degrees and the symbolism and the interpretation of the different degrees. This is not Sabian symbol. This is a different language. There are many lenses to look at astrology, but this guy, right, has this degrees of the zodiac, and I uploaded the entire work that you can find in our group if that interests you. And you'll see that 22 degrees of Taurus, some of the financial astrologers are concerned about the market. Like, this isn't necessarily the right time to be making huge, large investments, because this matches, right? This particular astrological setup matches or is parallel to the great inflation that occurred from 65 to 82. Now, I am not a financial astrologer, and I don't want to set you off on the wrong course, but I'm not going to be surprised if we're going to continue to see some large fluctuations in the market. In 2024, Jupiter and Uranus are working on meeting each other in the skies. They're working on being right next to each other in a conjunction. And that's part of our 2024 forecast. So save the date for 11/11. We're going to be talking about that, but it increases the volatility of things going on in the market: Taurus, money, food, right? Why am I building garden beds? Right? Why am I doing things like that? Because that's what I see happening. I see disruptions in the chain. If you look at that document that of the degrees of the zodiac, there's different interpretations for 22 degrees of Taurus. They're not all bad. One that I found is great in terms of precision that's required for surgery, like very precise things. Another one had to do with honeybees. There was this whole interpretation of honeybees. Another one had to do with utility, right? And so for a personal example, this eclipse is occurring in my 11th house. And so the 11th house is how it's like our audience, it's our groups, it's our networks, it's our large group of people. It's opposite the 5th house, right? Where we are the leader, where we have our own creative expression, our creativity. And so because this eclipse is happening in my 11th house, something that you have seen is that I've changed my branding. I've gone back to my name, and I've incorporated bees into astrology. Right? I realize not everybody here is interested in beekeeping. It's not going to be this huge dramatic change, but I didn't know this stuff until after the fact. I just got done wearing my old pair of jeans, and I couldn't wear them one more single day, and I had to be myself, right? This eclipse happening in that axis for me personally makes a lot of sense. It just occurred a little earlier than perhaps next week. So what is really the takeaway here? Depending on where the eclipse is going to hit for you, you just want to go slow, you want to be aware, and you want to, I think just going slow is the main thing that I'm hearing as the biggest message, because the changes that occur for people that are occurring rapidly, they don't necessarily feel good, right? And so I'm going to give you another personal example of this eclipse. Some of you guys know that I have a son that was placed in an adoption a long time ago, and we spoke on the phone for the first time yesterday, right? And this is an example of relationships and eclipses. It was good. It was bad. It wasn't planned. I was in the middle of something else. It was very hard to look at my phone and be like, I got to take this call, right? It's surprising. It was a sudden change of events. All right. The things that we had planned weren't necessarily going to work out, and we had to talk about it. And so this is another example of how the eclipse in Libra can show up for you. All right. The eclipse keywords in general, if we're looking at eclipses in general, these are cathartic moments, Don't you think that was cathartic for him and for me, right? Karmic moments. Don't you mean you can see that? There's a rebalancing going on. It is not comfortable out there, but it will be, once I get my branding right, once we get some more phone calls in, once I get the garden how I want it, it will be. It's not right now, right? It's destabilizing. But in the destabilization, that's where we can start to be comfortable with the uncertainty of things. And the more things shake up, it's almost like if you can just kind of take on an alter ego and be like, okay, this is the good part of the movie, Now, when I was upset yesterday, I had to lean on two other people's faith because I didn't have it myself. And so that can be that idea of where things are destabilizing, things are shaking up. You start to lean on other people that have faith when you don't in those moments. And that's what takes us through to the other side, because they can clearly see, Tiffany, this is a God moment. Tiffany, this is the universe working on your behalf. What do you teach? What do you tell people? Right. And so I too can have these moments of rebalancing and enlightening and upheaval and destiny and fate all wrapped up in this week of October. People will also be experiencing these global events, and I think they'll be more in the financial sector, personally. Now, if you saw the article, you'll see that I was equating eclipses to interceptions, and I know Anne's chart well enough to know that she's got an interception in the Gemini and Sagittarius realm. Because that's one I've studied, because I have a lot of teachers that have that particular one. So as you see my interpretation of the eclipses and the interceptions, they're similar because something is hidden. There's something internalized. There's a hidden potential that's going to be made known. For interceptions, it's more like the karmic course of your life. And for eclipses, it's like a lightning flash that changes things. Is that clear what I think the differences are? Yeah, okay. So the interceptions, lifelong journey, good, because it's developmental opportunities. You came here for it, you signed up for it. It's not bad. There are unique challenges with it. And I have never not seen someone overcome their interception challenges. And when they hear about them, it's like, it makes sense. Okay, eclipses, things we can't predict. I couldn't have guessed in a million years I would have gotten a phone call like that yesterday. Never would have guessed it, right? Things that we can't predict that are coming at us and that pivot the course of our lives. Now, relationships will be different, right? So, where is the eclipse in your chart? I'm sure that all of you have already looked it up. Louise also has the Gemini Sag interception. Maybe we could start a little club for everybody that has the same interceptions. Julie, my Libra is in my 11th house too. Okay, Lori's beginner, so we're going to help her out first. All right. And Louise is in the 5th house. Good. Okay. So if we don't know where the eclipse is, I'm trying to decide, because I want to get through these slides, but I don't want to talk about the personal stuff on recording. So I almost think we should pause the recording, find everybody's moment, and then go through the rest of the slides. So pause. Great. So we just did a quick lookup of a couple of charts. And let's see here. Get the screen share going back up. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at each of the potentials. Gosh. Okay, 1st and 7th house. And so what we know about the 1st and 7th house, if the eclipse is falling in this for you, it's either going to affect you personally and profoundly in your 1st house of who you are, how you shine, your identity, or your 7th house, your mate, your soulmate, your partnership, your committed partnership, your husband, your wife. Can be business partnership, but not usually. It can be ideas of how you think a marriage partnership should look. It could be ideas and beliefs from childhood about your parents. There are other ways to look at relationships if you're currently not married or not wanting to be married. I wrote down self-acceptance is going to be a big piece for this particular one. Julie's asking, could it be a close child? Children we look for in the 5th house. You know, and so children, I don't know, you know, children we look for in the 5th house. They wouldn't be a 1st or 7th house thing. I wouldn't look at there. And then, you know, you could also look in the 4th house for roots and childhood issues. But that's my take, and you might experience it differently, and you might teach me something. So under this eclipse, will more be revealed about your personal direction? Will you guys let me know if is anybody live here in the 1st or 7th house? And the reason this first bullet point is
I am Tiffany, yeah.
Okay, yay. Congratulations. Everyone's like hates Tiffany today. I'm the Scorpio with the news. All right. So the reason I put this first bullet point the way I did is because according to your human design, some people have a clearly defined personal direction. They're going the way that they're going. I'm one of those people. Other people are not designed that way. Some people are designed that their personal direction depends on being around the correct other. And so if in your design, you're not somebody who has that personal direction, that's okay. We're not all meant to know exactly where the ship is going. We're not all designed that way. We couldn't all be designed that way. It would be mass chaos, right? And so the idea here is that if you're not around the correct other, right, that you're gonna be on the boat flailing around. And so the idea of being around correct other people will help you know your identity and direction. You know, that's very tricky because there's lots of themes around codependency. There's lots of themes around just the Libra stuff, the unhealthy, unbalanced relationship stuff can come up. And so if you're around the incorrect other, people who are their not selves, who are not really rising to the occasion of their lives and knowing themselves deeply, you're going to be amplifying that. Okay. So I know that's a little human design-y tangent, but I like to talk about it because you don't hear it in mainstream astrology. And I think it's really important to Venn diagram them. I'm super self-conscious because I sliced my finger yesterday and I have an ugly Band-Aid on. So I'm being weird with my hands. But and then I read that the 22 degrees of Uranus is about precision and surgery and slicing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm never using that knife again. So, you know, these 1st and 7th house themes are who am I versus who am I with you versus who are we together? How can I overcome some of my insecurities if I have any? What else did I say? Replacing a fear of losing myself within a relationship, right? There's a lot of really great material in kind of the sacred feminine circles about this sacred reunification within myself, right? And so that, yes, the divine feminine, the vibe, the feeling, the frequency, the emotion, to get to the depth of that, that's actually what creates the frequency to create everything else. It's fertility, it is creation, it is life, right? It is amplification. And so that idea of sacred reunification within myself is that whole Libra idea of balancing things. I'm not Darlene. Okay, so you're looking for 21 degrees of Libra in your house. And yes, Darlene, where is 21 degrees of Libra? What house is it in your chart?
Well, I guess that's the part I'm not clear on. Sorry, I'm still learning some of this. I have a Libra stellium. I have lots of Libra in my chart. Okay. Is that what I'm looking for?
Do you see any numbers at all?
I know that I have Moon at 8 degrees and some change, and Venus at 19, and then I also have my midheaven and my south node in Libra.
So what
but I don't know where exactly. I don't know degrees on those.
That's okay. The 19 degrees, what house is that in?
That's 10th, as is the Moon and Venus are both in Libra and 10th house. and the Venus is at 19.
Okay, so you're looking at a 10th house. And with it so close, you could be looking at 9th or 10th house.
I see. Okay, thank you for explaining.
Yeah, totally. It's really important. Julie, I have you under a different last name. What did the other last name start with? Julie B. D. Thank you. Oh, yeah, got it. Okay. Julie D. B. Julie B is, yes, you are in the 11th house. This is in your 11th house. It is close to the cusp. Yep, you're welcome. Okay. So as we're settling back into the 1st and 7th house themes, because you might be going to look at other people's charts and see, all right, yeah, this is making sense for this person. The idea of having a significant other or that sacred reunification inside yourself, whether you look at it as yin yang, whether you look at it as masculine feminine, the idea is what am I devoted to when I'm making my bed in the morning, when I'm cleaning out the fridge? Am I doing it out of duty, or am I doing it out of devotion to something, devotion to something that's other than me? One of my favorite books is authors is Sharon Gannon, and she writes about feeding the birds in the morning. And I love that, because what that means to her is that she's of service before anything else, before she makes her coffee, before she does her yoga, whatever she does in the morning, she's going to go feed the birds. And for me, it's watering the bees. And I didn't do that this morning, but I'm watering us by being here. Okay, let's see. We've got the 2nd and 8th houses. So if you want to let me know, that's Shelley with her sun, S-U-N. And the idea with the 2nd and 8th houses is that it's the money one, right? It's the income, the 2nd house, and then the shared resources, the 8th house. That's the keywords, but it's actually much, much deeper than that. Some good exercises for you to do with the 2nd and 8th house has to do with your worth. Your net worth is not your self-worth. You guys have heard me say that a lot. If you don't have this exercise yet, it's a unique way of doing a financial inventory, and you don't have to wait for the eclipse to hit your 2nd and 8th houses to do this. But what you want to look at is, how am I treating money? How am I treating my finances? Am I giving it to a financial manager and not looking at it and not studying it and not understanding it? And is everything that comes into my account available for spending, and I'm not planning for the future? Am I wadding up my dollar bills and putting them somewhere? Am I neatly stacking them with proper order and care and crispness? Do I have some sort of routine that I do with my coins? Or are they just all somewhere that I don't care about and I'm not looking at? Am I recording my every single piece of income with gratitude, grateful, write a little thank you, kiss it, whatever you do, that way? Am I looking at my outgoing expenses and creating some sort of budget along with my income? How am I treating money? Do a personal inventory of that. What are my beliefs around money? And really, really actually looking at that. Do I think that I'm always going to be rescued and land on my feet no matter what? Do I think that money grows on trees? Do I think that money is only given by hard work? Do I think that men are supposed to provide money? Do I think that did I grow up in a family where the women were the providers? What are my beliefs, right? And those how you treat money things are how you treat relationships, because how you are is how you are. Okay, so if you find that, like my favorite example is a client, and she said that the kind of persons that she dates, they're always putting her last. She's never considered first. And I said, oh, okay, well, how do you treat your money? And she was like, I did not pay you to talk about money. I want this guy to like me, right? And I'm like, well, I just need to know how you treat your money. And she's like, well, I don't. It's not top consideration. And I'm like, okay, well, would you consider making it top consideration and valuing it and let me know if your relationships start to change over time, right? Not overnight, not on Friday the 13th under the black moon, not under the red candle, just over time, what happens, right? So a second and eighth house, yes, it's money, but it also has to do with the stories that we tell ourselves about money, about provision, about our resources, our authority, and our spiritual authority, which is different for our different beliefs. So this also shows you where you have a zone of genius. Now, of course, there can be some sort of upheaval going on. Where am I self-sabotaging when I'm not feeling loved for who I am? That really, to me, is the best question on here for anybody going through this eclipse. Am I actually, in the second and eighth house, am I actually creating something self-sabotaging because I'm not feeling loved for who I am? And if that's the case, what can I do about that? You can do something about that, you know, because you can go to you for that. I had to do it yesterday. I had to crawl in the rocking chair and pretend like I was in the rocking chair of God, and just being like, you know what, you're a precious child of God, you're loved, and it's okay. So this is where that soul searching can come into play. So catharsis around money, catharsis around fear of abandonment, catharsis around controlling situations, right? This eclipse will open your hands, right? It will open your hands. So I have some other things listed there, of course. There can be a certain intensity around these second and eighth house topics. Yeah. Okay. And thanks. Lori has offered feedback on the seventh house that it's speaking to her in terms of her reckoning with herself. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, guys. So in the third and ninth houses, I love this one because it's my networks and my ideas, right? So my social networks, my neighbors, my extended family, my chosen family, my schoolmates, people that I grew up with, that I was close to, that's third house stuff. Ninth house stuff is me and Lori, like university level friends, university level people, being like, I was on the water ski team. So those are ninth house friends, right? They're not third house friends. We don't have a shared history from way, way, way back, but we have some shared philosophy based on a time in our life that we were starting to get our own philosophy around the world. So if this eclipse is happening in your third and ninth house, or even I'm using the example of Anne, right? And you're in Gemini and Sagittarius. So you could think about it this way for some of the advanced topic students. If you're looking at third and ninth house, you're also looking at Gemini and Sag if you want to, right? And so the idea here is that what is being illuminated and shaken up and shown to me in terms of, you know, the way that I'm learning, the way that I'm understanding things. You know, you could have, for example, I had a teacher, I've had a couple of teachers that really had some big falls, right? Really can't go back to that classroom anymore. That would be an eclipse in a ninth house or a third house situation, because it's absolutely going to affect the opposite. The opposite houses are on axes, how do you say it? That are team players. All right. So some people could be having a big, huge spiritual crisis and having confusion around what they believe and what their experience is versus what they've been told, right? When you have a near-death experience and then you go to some of the spiritual places, this is not a dig on church because I like church, but there are a lot of churches that don't teach about near-death experiences and afterlife experiences. So that can be a very big confusion when your experience is different than the doctrine that you thought that you believed in, right? So there can be that can be massive for somebody during an eclipse, right? And it can be massively positive, right? This could be a time when you're really needing to travel to understand more, right? If I could do my children's education over again, I would say, I tell my daughter this all the time, like anytime you want to drop out, which is probably why she's going to get her PhD. But I'm like, anytime you want to drop out, I'll teach you a musical instrument, a foreign language, right? And I had a third one. Now I don't know what it is. That's hilarious. But a musical instrument and a foreign language, and you're good to go. Like that is an education to me. So this could be some of the themes, like ninth house freedom, needing to travel, needing to explore, needing to see the world, needing to taste different flavors and different spices. I got some Ethiopian spices the other day, and they did not agree with me, and I was so excited to try them. But the idea is that you're willing to try them, you're willing to go out and see things differently, right? So what you're learning now can be changing your perspective profoundly, what you're deconditioning from. If we look at the 4th and 10th house, sorry, I should pause. Any questions on that or the ones before? I'm not seeing any chats. Okay, it's okay if you want to ask later too. So the 4th and 10th house, now this is a biggie, right? So the 4th house, our home and family, our roots, what we believe in from childhood, how we were raised, our conditioning in our initial family setting, and also what we need out of a home, what we need to feel comfortable. That's 4th house stuff. And then 10th house stuff is our give back to the world. Some of us have career stuff there. Some of us don't. Not everybody works, but everybody has a purpose and a give back. And that's important, you know, that part is important. It doesn't mean that we all need to rise to the top of some kind of CEO status. It does mean that we need to be aware of the gifts that the world needs from us, right? That we're not here for nothing, that our life wasn't a giveaway or a throwaway, that we are here to help other people in some capacity. And that's the message of the 10th house for you, the message of the midheaven. I did a pretty solid midheaven class. If anybody missed it, it's free. It's on YouTube, and you're welcome to go back and get that on our YouTube. So 4th and 10th, roots, refuge, career. And sometimes we're not getting what we want in terms of home and family and career. Sometimes it's not the one that we had in mind. And sometimes we have to let go of that thing that we had in mind to allow the thing that's wanting to happen to come through us. And so if this eclipse is happening in your 4th and 10th house, it can look, you know, on the disaster side. Like it could be like I don't even want to speak words out loud, but it could be on the, oh, shoot, I have to do a bunch of repair now side, right? It could be on the 10th house side. Like, I realize that I don't want to be in this career anymore, and I'm making a big pivot and it's uncomfortable, but I've got to go in the direction that I've got to go. So when things shake us up, we tend to want to control them. It's just our human nature. The yoga principles, right? We're either going towards pleasure or avoiding pain. And so you're going to find yourself in this eclipse going towards pleasure or avoiding pain. There aren't too many yogis, right? We're all yogis. I'm addressing you as yogis. There aren't too many of us that are going to take the middle path and try to find neutrality there. I'm sorry for the phone ringing. I'm just gonna wait it out because there we go. Nope. Because I can't find the pause button. So the 4th and 10th house, right? There's this idea around, again, open hands, open heart, whatever's supposed to happen is happening for a reason that's better than the whatever I had planned. And where can I take responsibility for my own life, my own home and family, my own 10th house, my own career. When we're trying to control things, Anne Lamott has this quote that help is just the sunny side of control, right? And so that's what I had in mind when I put this bullet point in here about who am I bossing around that doesn't really need my help, right? Who am I trying to control so that I feel better, so that I feel safe and secure, right? If somebody else is blowing things up and it's affecting these areas, these are very big areas of our life that are totally destabilizing. You know, and we have tools now to do some of the ancestral healing and awareness that helps the future generations and the generations behind us that we didn't have 20 years ago. We didn't have awareness around those tools for ancestral healings. And I like to hear people talk about the gifts. It's not just that it was all trauma and bad stuff. It's like, well, what did the ancestors bring to us that was actually really an amazing part of my life and my personality? You know, I get to do the things that I get to do in this precious human life because of the people that went before me and my family that suffered And I can be grateful for that instead of just being like, well, they had a shit life, and so now I'm going to heal that lifetime. Like, no, yes, but no. Right? There's some gifts because of the ripple effect. So what am I aware of? What feels out of balance with home and work? In terms of the 5th and 11th house, right? This is where it's happening for me. I gave you guys the examples of just changing my business appearance, which was scary, frightening, and I definitely had some mean girls be mean to me about it. And, you know, it's like the worst, if that's the worst thing that can happen, and that's the worst thing that I was worried about, then it's okay. You know, it was an intense day. And these are people I don't know. These aren't our members. These aren't my friends. These aren't my colleagues. So there's a shakeup, and sudden change is not agreeable to everyone, right? Yet I can't not go in the direction that I was intended to go. So the 5th house is about how I shine, how I show up, my own creativity. I'm using a metaphorical eye for anybody else with the 5th and 11th house. If I've forgotten how to roar, right? The 5th house, ruled by Leo, typically ruled by the sun, ruled our passions, the things that we're most excited about, the things that we want to naturally talk about. You know, what can I see about that now, right? You know, I miss my horses. I miss being out in the garden. There are some things where I have lost my roar around that are coming back full circle. So 5th and 11th house is working together. Myself, how I'm shining, how I have my own creative self-expression. Personally, my sun is, my personality sun is in the gate of self-expression. So if I'm not doing something that feels creative to me, I feel very restricted. You could say that about everybody, but the more I studied my chart from the lens of astrology and human design, it was even more true. So why not just be under my own name? You know, why not? Why not? I feel better. That's a symptom. That's a sign. That's a signal, right? That's nice. So the 11th house would have to do with our networks, our groups, our social clubs. I was nominated to be the president of our beekeeping club, and there was no reason for me to decline other than it didn't seem right. So you're aware of what works and doesn't work. Libra, which partnerships feel good? 11th house, which clubs feel good? When is it my time to shine or not? It's not. And that's not an easy decision to make. I feel like I disappointed a lot of people. And so then I take on the disappointment in myself as though it's mine. But when I sat down, I'm not disappointed. I'm proud of myself that I didn't take on more than I could do. Right? And it was a tough week, guys. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is so you can see astrology in action and start to make sense of it yourself, right? So what creative gifts and talents am I learning about myself? Well, I don't know yet. That's going to be the other side of the eclipse, because I said no to all these things. There will be space for me to find that out again, right? And because I only said yes to the things that I know I want to focus on, astrology and bees, right? Does it mean I'll never teach another psychic class again? No, I have some on the schedule. I'm excited about it. I like doing that, but I have to kind of narrow some things down in terms of what I want to do with my 5th and 11th house. I have to make the adjustments here. So there's some other themes there for you. Overcoming challenges with children and parenting. And to get a call from a child that I hadn't spoken to, right? That's eclipsey. That's super eclipsey. The 6th and 12th house, this is kind of the end of our discovery. You know, the 6th and 12th house, the 6th house is your health, your routine, your day-to-day routine, your personal rhythm, how you feel in your physical body. It's ruled by Virgo. And so it's the small things, it's the details. Eclipses blow things wide open. So if you've had any medical mysteries, this could be a time when things are solved. So hold hope. And the 12th house, right? The 12th house is the unconscious. And so if the eclipse is blown, like, you don't know what you don't know. This is a tricky one to predict. I have my sun in the 12th house and my moon and 2 other planets. So I'm very comfortable with that territory, right? It's the unknown. And so, part of your eclipse lesson, part of your eclipse story can be getting more comfortable with things that are uncertain, things that are certain but uncertain, like death, right? So, in terms of your health, oh yeah, that was a pretty good bullet point. So it could be that you just can't do something that you used to always could do, right? Like there are some people that eat fried egg and bacon and smoke a cigarette with their coffee, and they're 105 years old, but you got to this eclipse and one of those things isn't working for you anymore and you have to give it up. It can also be a time when the things that you used to really, really, really like to do aren't that much fun anymore. You're not getting the hit off of it. You're not getting the oxytocin. You're not getting the emotional oomph from it. And so it fades away, right? Like, for example, I made matzo ball soup last night, right? For me and my dad. And I made it with vegetarian broth, for example. The chicken broth lost its oomph for me. Put a little cumin in it, made it all right. There can be some things that aren't good for my health anymore that are culturally important that I want to continue, but that I drop. So self-sabotage is huge in the 12th house. So those type of themes about, can I see where I'm a prisoner of my own making? Can I see where I set the ball rolling to then be upset? Can I see where I put you in a prison because I had an expectation of you and you didn't meet it, right? Yeah, that last bullet point. What messages am I getting through my physical, emotional body and my dreams? I had some crazy dreams last night. Hard to say what unconscious themes are playing out when I'm not aware of them. So one thing you can do is a gratitude back of, well, here's what I know now, and here's what I can do different, right? The Maya Angelou quote. I think that's all I did for slides this time around. We are pretty much on time, and I am happy to open it up if anybody wants to talk and ask questions. Let me go ahead and close the recording. So thank you, everybody. If you're watching the replay, glad you could make it. Hope you learned something fun, especially around some sensitive information topics that I appreciate you holding sacred and holy to. So until we see next time, I'm Tiffany, and thanks for being here. We stop the recording.